Hey, it's Charlie at Charlie Slybox, and we are back with part three of whatever this streamer series is now called. What is it? Evolution of Streamers?
Evolution of modern streamer design.
Evolution of Modern Streamer Design. That sounds pretty technical. But anyway, we're here with part three of modern streamers. These uh, are the newest stuff. We kind of finished up volume two there with around the year 2000 with the Zoo Cougar and the Double Bunny, I think
hmm
was kind of where we wrapped that up. And we are now in to what I like to think, not that I like to think, it really is the golden age of streamer design. From the year 2000 to right now, there has been probably 10 times as much innovation in streamers as there was in the previous 75 years. Um, and to some degree, a lot of that previous 75 years still carries over into the stuff we tie today. But this is sort of where all the cool guys came around. The guys like Kelly Gallup. You can't talk about streamers without talking about Kelly. Russ Madden, Blaine Chocolate, maybe the most innovative tire on the planet at this point. That guy not only ties innovative flies, he makes innovative materials to make those flies. So he's got a little leg up on the rest of us. Tommy Lynch, Johnny McClure, um, Andreas Anderson, Matt Winkler, Rich Strolis. There's a whole pile, and I know I'm leaving names out. And if I did, it's not a slight. I'm just old and can't remember all of you. I'd remember you if you called me. If you haven't called me in the last year and I didn't mention your name, that's your own fault. At any rate, um, that is the batch of guys, plus whoever we want to add in there, that really started kind of changing up the streamer program. And I really do think that streamer fishing became one thing is Kelly's Modern Streamer book. When that came out around 2000, um, was it Modern Streamers?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
modern streamers, trophy
yeah,
trout.
yeah. For the first one, came out around 2000. That's what really kind of got everybody going on it. And I'm by everybody, I mean the fishing population, the general population. Um, as that kind of came out and people started seeing the ideas of different streamers besides the woolly bugger and the muddler and featherwing kind of things. Innovation went kind of a little wild. There's all kinds of different stuff these days, and a lot more purpose-driven flies. I do think the advent of tailored, specific sinking lines had a lot to do with that. You could tie a lot of different style flies, big flies that weren't so dependent on being super castable on a floating line. Maybe those big heavy flies always cast better on a sinking line. Um, the advent of that and the perfection of that, I guess, is probably a better way to put it. The perfection of sinking lines made a lot more of these bigger streamers viable. And that's where we started seeing things like the Sex Dungeon and, just kind of going down that list. The Sex Dungeon, the Drunken Disorderly from Tommy Lynch, um, Blaine's Game Changer. Jaron tied this one, but that's a heckin' big one. You can tie them smaller, but these are big flies. Um, Rich's stuff is all, for the most part, all pretty big stuff. And that's where the big stuff kind of started really going wild. And I'll tell you, from my experience with the full size Gonga, which was not the first one that I tied. I've talked in other videos about the Gonga was a single hook fly to start, and then it became a big articulated fly. And my experience with this fly and big flies in general, I'm not saying that it is only this one, but when I first started fishing this fly and nobody else was fishing big stuff, I moved every fish in the river. Everybody came
Yeah,
to
I
look
bet.
at it. So it was incredibly exciting, and they ate it pretty good too. Um, that's that, and I think everybody kind of had that same experience for a long time because eventually that big giant stuff stopped working as well. Fish would come and look at it, but they didn't eat it near as well as they did when we first started throwing them. But man, when we first started throwing it, that was awfully fun. Awfully fun. Really cool to throw a fly at the bank and have six fish chase it out. Um, there's a video on the internet somewhere of me fishing. I
I've
don't
seen it.
I don't even remember who with, but man,
Yep.
just fish just hot on it. Um, and of course, you spend one day doing that, and then you're a streamer junkie, and that's where you end up. Um,
Can I ask you kind of a tangential question about that big stuff not working as much
huh?
anymore? So I was thinking about this the other night because we were having, we talk about the size of the streamers a lot. Do you think, obviously these fish aren't that old? It's not like
Right.
a fish has been seeing
Sure.
giant streamers thrown around for 25 minutes. So do you think that it's just that the big streamer stuff, like when people think of streamers, they're still throwing all of this big stuff and it's still a majority of what fish are seeing? Because like right now in the Colorado, right? Like those fish still don't eat, like they don't eat those flies
Sure.
all that good.
Well,
So you think they just see
and
more big streamers
I
than small
shouldn't say they
streamers, or
don't
like,
eat it. You know, the catch to it is you are hunting a particular fish with those big flies.
yeah,
You know, a truly big fish is going to eat that fly. That's what they're looking for. That's what they eat. That's what they make their living off of. Um, Most guys, myself included, you know, just want to go out and catch some fish.
yeah,
So downsizing your fly, you will catch more fish, maybe not as big, on a smaller size fly for sure. Um, Guys that go out and fish a big streamer on a sinking line and cover water and get it done all day, maybe don't catch as many fish, but they catch some giant fish.
yeah,
So it's not that you know I should say the smaller size fish probably don't eat them as well.
yeah, for
Don't
sure.
eat that big stuff as
Yeah,
well. And maybe they, I won't say they never did. They back in the day they did. They
yeah,
ate it pretty good. You know, I don't know what everybody else fishes. I know what I fish and what I
yeah.
see everybody fish. But gosh, we still sell a lot of these giant flies.
It's
You know,
crazy.
we sell tons of them. So
It's
clearly
crazy.
they're working for somebody
Yeah.
along the way. Um, that's a good question. That's a
Because I
good
think,
question.
just from my experience, I mean, I think the big fish still eat I mean, not that the
They
railing 2 footers all the time out here, but like I still catch big fish on the small stuff that you can be
Absolutely,
accurate with.
absolutely. And I
Um,
think there's probably a trade-off there, and especially for me, you know, I've had a bad shoulder for 1,000 years,
mm,
so throwing a big fly I can only do for so long, but throwing a little fly I could do that all day.
yep,
So I tend to fish the little fly a lot more than the
yeah,
big fly,
yeah,
and I catch big. You know, this comes back to, you know, the old guy that says, you know, I catch all my fish on a Royal Wolf because that's all you fish with.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
catch them all on a baby Gonga because that's what I fish with most of the time.
yeah,
You know, occasionally I catch them on a swim coach because I fish that too. Dirty hip, yeah, whatever it is.
yeah.
You'll catch them on what you fish, probably. You know, there's a lot of these flies. I won't say are interchangeable, but I'll still say they're interchangeable. You
Especially
know,
when it's on.
yes,
I think
when
when
it,
it's
yeah,
off, it's a little bit different, but
1,000 billion%. When the bite is on, they will eat a lot of stuff. Same goes for dries, nymphs.
yeah,
When the bite is on, they'll eat a lot of stuff. When the bite is off is when it gets a little bit more technical and you know, going deeper and you know, my way of thinking of it is make it not as fun. You're fishing a big heavy sinking line, a big fly. You're fishing it slow. You're not seeing the fish eat it, but you might end up with a 3 footer.
yeah,
You know, that's the mindset that you have to put yourself in. And there are options galore for that kind of thing
yeah,
these days. You know, there's no shortage. And that I think also one of the coolest things about this is the advent of those big streamers. You know, from guys like Russ Madden and Kelly, um, has gives you a big platform to tie on. They're fun to tie. They're
yeah,
fun to experiment with. A lot of stuff has sort of started to be purpose driven. You know, so it's not just, you know, variation on a bugger. It is a fly to imitate a baby brown trout or uh, a fathead minnow
yeah,
or a sculpin. You know, very specifically, and not necessarily that it has to look exactly like it, but it's built to do that. One of the cool things I see these days too is the design of the fly, and I harp on this all the time. Coming back to that bad shoulder,
hmm,
is making a fly that's big that isn't really big. You know, big outside profile, but doesn't weigh so much to cast. One of our favorite things to do is go through the fly catalogs or through the fly samples and find the ones that will cast like a sock. It doesn't take long to find out.
yeah,
You know, a big fly that is light enough to cast and easy on your arm that you can fish it all day is inherently going to be better than a big heavy fly that you're just not going to keep up on it for very long. Um, there are, let's see, I covered specific uses. There's also more profiles and shapes. Um, this is a drunken disorderly, again tied by Jaron, um, so you can kind of get the overall profile of this. This one's going to be a 2-part fly, and you'll have to get up closes of this. This is one of the first flies that is, you know, is tied, first streamers anyway, that's tied on a jig hook, not to be a jig, but for that angled head. That deer hair head has been around since Budler days, but Tommy Lynch figured out to put it on a. Originally, they were tied on a straight hook, but he figured out to tie it on an angled jig hook. Um, so the head slopes down, and what that does is it acts as a lip. So when you retrieve this fly, it swims like a rapala. And you know, all good ideas are super obvious once somebody else discovers them.
of course,
You
yeah,
know, it's been sitting in front of all of us for 1,000 years, and Tommy Lynch figured it out, and that's a damn good idea.
yeah,
Of course, that's the way you do that. And that's what I always say about a good fly: is you look at it and you say, "That's of course the way you would do
yeah,
that." It never comes out quite as obvious as you think, but that's a great idea. The design of this fly, the overall profile, that's a pretty long, big fly, but there's not a ton to it. You know, it's not going to weigh 47 pounds to cast. It's got a lot of rabbit on it.
I was
which
gonna say
I
a lot
don't,
of rabbit on
a
that
lot of
thing.
rabbit on
Yeah.
it that I don't love. But a fly that size, especially, is for
And
bigger sized rods.
and purpose driven too, right?
Yes,
Like he always, I don't really fish them, but Jaron always talks about how those things move in slow water. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
in that situation, having
Uh,
a material that kind of
which
sits it down a little
which
bit,
brings
and
us to a point about being able to control the sink rate.
yeah,
You know, the D&D that I did on the video that we've got, I put the fur in a dubbing loop so that it doesn't have the leather. The leather of the rabbit is what gets heavy.
yeah,
Um, but being able to control the sink rate, when you have a fly that has a ton of materials, a big wide profile, you know, that's a great example. Big wide profile, not much weight on that fly. That fly is going to sink slowly,
yep,
which in some cases is what you need and what you want, versus something like a Crelex that's a pretty slim, slender fly with heavy eyes. That's going to bomb right to the bottom.
yep,
You know, a fly like this in this is going to sound weird, in high water where water's up along the bank in the willows, that plummets right down into all that junk on the bottom,
yep,
is probably not your best choice. A fly, maybe not this big, but a fly like this
yep.
is going to sink slower. Tequila, yeah, bigger fly, wider profile, um, peanut envy, something like that. Although that's a pretty slick fly, also. That
That
one
fly
wants to
rides high in
plummet.
the water column. I think
It
that's a
it
brass cone
it
on that
it,
fly.
it might be on the, yeah. It depends on, yeah. I don't fish store flies.
Yeah,
Mine are heavy.
I fished one the other
Yeah,
day, and it was high in the
lots of
column.
marabou on it too,
Yeah,
so they're hard to keep wet. But you know, made for a sinking line. Again, that's a Kelly fly, made for
100%,
a sinking line.
100%.
And everybody's got their way of doing it. Which, you know, to the end point on all this is there's a million ways to do it. Now we're seeing a lot of them. This is one of the cool things. I was just talking to Russ Miller this morning about the signature fly programs that all these companies have. You know, that as much as everybody likes to make fun of that, none of these flies would be sitting here on this desk if nobody was getting something out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
These would all be secret flies that only we knew about, or Kelly knew about, or Russ knew about, and now they're out there for everybody, and that spurs more creativity,
Yep.
which is one of the coolest things about fly tying. This, you know, we've got this series going to go on to nymphs and dries as well. But I mean, the streamer game right now is pretty hot. You know,
Yep.
everybody's, you know, you had tying night last night. You know, half the guys in there
They
are
do.
tying streamers of
Yep.
one sort or another. They're
We talked about this a little bit, but I think with the streamers too, every people's personality comes out in the streamers. It comes out in all fly tying. You can
sure,
kind of Russ talks about this how you can look in somebody's box and kind of know about what they do
sure,
just by seeing how they tie. But I think the streamers more so than anything, you can really see like here's my jig streamer guys,
right,
here's my freestone guys, here's my tailwater guy. Like you can
yep,
really
yeah, yeah. See where everybody's
this
plan
guy really
is.
likes fishing heavy. It's same with the carp flies actually. Like some guys really like them
Mhm.
heavy, some guys really like them light. They're all kind of fishing the same stuff, but it's
And I bet if you
personality
ask
and
those guys, they probably all have evolved to whatever point they're
hmm
at. You know, been through a few different things,
hmm
and that's how you kind of, you know, it all works. It also, you know, all works sometimes. It all doesn't work sometimes.
yeah,
You kind of pick your favorite way to do it. Winkler's a great example. Man, is he good at what he does?
yep,
He's got it very well dialed in. You know,
yep,
that's a guy that has not only dialed in the fishing aspect of it, but exact specific patterns for his method of fishing.
yep.
Great, yeah, great example.
I think that's something too that's interesting about not to just belabor the point, but like
No, please.
fishing these different types of flies. Like I think about it with me with that jig streamer. Like people
Mhm.
ask me about the jig streamer stuff, and like with fly selection, it's like bro, I tie one fly in one color
Yep,
in one size with one weight. But I've spent so much time with that pattern in so
that's the
many
one.
different situations that I also just know every variable about how to fish it in slow
Sure,
water, deep water, fast water, dirty water,
sure.
all that stuff. And I think that's one of the points about these as well. Is like if you pick Baby Ganga is going to be my confidence fly. You know, whatever it
Sure,
transforms
whatever
into
it
your
is.
confidence flies, not that you pick it. But you just get so good at fishing them in different situations and making them
Absolutely.
do what you want to
Yeah, you
do.
kind of make your own bed there. You know, if a fly is super effective and you catch a lot of, go out one time and catch a lot of fish on it,
Yeah.
you're probably going to start with it the next time,
Yes.
and then you're going to go out and, you know, whatever fish you catch, you'll be catching on that fly,
Yes.
because you had it on. It does, you know, that is something I am very guilty of. Is I very rarely change um, outside my little package of streamers.
Yep.
You know, I know they work, and I shouldn't say. I shouldn't probably do that as much, because when I do that, it's kind of nice. You see what somebody else's idea was and how it's going to work from there.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
a lot of different ways to do it. It doesn't hurt to try it a few different ways. You know,
Well, and it opens it up. I'll go back to the point of watching you fish that swim coach on the arc. You know
Sure,
what I mean? Like I had never done that long leader stuff, and I'd never really tried to just dance a fly high in the column. I
sure.
I was familiar with the idea of trying to let flies sit and dance, but it was always with that jiggy, heavier stuff,
Sure.
and it's just kind of a different
Yeah,
mentality,
yes,
a different
absolutely.
game. And then you watch somebody do something else, and you're just like, it's not that I wouldn't have caught that fish that you caught there, but it would have been a
In a
different
different way.
experience to
In a
catch
different
it
way.
that
Yep.
yes, and
Yeah, and I think most fish that you eat your streamer would eat a variety. Especially when it's on.
yeah,
They'd eat it on a sinking line. They'd eat a different fly. There's a lot of variable to that. But having the bite that's on, that's one thing that John Barr always said. When the fish are on a chew, they're easy to catch. It's when they're not on a chew that pattern really becomes something to worry about. And that is why so often nymph fishing or dry dropper fishing, I change. I catch a few fish. I change the fly,
yep.
just to see what else they'll eat. Or ultimately maybe to see what they won't eat. One of the things that, I found is if they're on small streamers, they'll eat most of them. If they're on big streamers, they won't necessarily eat most of them
Hmm.
because they don't all react the same way. They don't all sink at the same rate. They don't fishing it the same way does not necessarily put it in the same zone.
Yeah.
And this is one of those
I agree
things
with you
that
100% on on the small streamer thing because I think about that with a
no,
jig streamer. Like I could do this with a ganga, I could do this with it,
yes, you can do
and
it with
it's
a
all
lot of
gonna
stuff.
work.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, you're getting a piece of food in front of them, wiggling around. Everybody asks about the retrieve on streamers. Just on an aside, my idea is to make. That's why I like a fly that you can see because the idea is to make it look like a fish.
Yes.
Make it look like a fish that isn't going to get away. Any kind of little wiggle, and you have to sort of imagine it on a sink tip line when it's down in the water, where you can't see it. You kind of have to kind of imagine. You have to kind of play with that in some shallower water where you can see it to see what your manipulations do to the fly. But there's so many cool flies these days, and so many of them. That's one of the points with this new modern series is the so many of the flies are articulated, and that I think originally, according to Kelly, was to put a hook in the front of the fly.
Mm.
A big fish will eat the head of the fly. Now, in my experience, that has not been that's not steadfast. My experience is the fish eats the fly. I don't think they target a. I have not seen. I've never felt like I missed a fish because he ate the head of the fly and I didn't have a hook there.
Sure. Yeah.
The other hook is not very far away, or the
Sculpzilla
single
wouldn't
hook.
catch very many fish if that was true.
Right. Sculpzilla catches a lot of fish. Yeah, right, straight down the pipe. I think the big advantage of the articulated fly is the wiggle,
Yeah.
and I say that because the big double gonga, um, you know, moves a ton of fish, and then I tied it in a smaller size, and it wasn't that the it wasn't that the small gonga or a bugger didn't work as well. But having that little extra bit of wiggle in there where you can manipulate the fly, it's just got a little more life to it.
Yep.
Um,
You can
and
do
for
more in a smaller space with it too.
absolutely, you can move the fly around. Makes it accessible to more manipulation. A single hook fly, a solid hook fly. Those little mins, those little twitches aren't going to move the
Yep.
fly back and forth. It's going to move it back, but not forth, and that's what you get out of the articulation. So that is one of the most of the new streamers you see these days are articulated. Very few streamers besides jig streamer stuff do you see that are not.
Well, and I'll say as somebody who fishes a lot of single hook stuff right now, especially like the bugger style
Sure.
stuff, it's definitely converting eats on those is a lot different than converting eats on the gong like
Just
the
doesn't have the
articulated
wiggle.
stuff.
Just
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you can't do it, but you have to cover. I've found you have to cover a lot more
move
ground
the
and
fly more.
keep kind of play the keep away
Yep.
game with them.
Yep.
Whereas with those, you can kind of pause it
Stall it
and
out.
wiggle it. You know what I mean, right in
Yep.
front of them, and
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
does enough.
Yeah. Little goofy mend.
Yes, but
Yep.
with the bugger stuff, it doesn't work like
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
It's not to say it doesn't catch a lot of fish, but
Sure.
it's just
Yeah. It's a different
different
method,
conversion.
for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Gosh, we got all off track, which is
I
actually
know.
okay. That's good. Those were all good. Articulation, front hook, extra wiggle. I talked about the bigger fly losing some efficacy.
Mm.
Um, and I'll temper that. Like I say, if you're committed to it, and go do it, and look for the right conditions, and like I say, commit to it.
And let's harp on that. The conditions with that stuff, at least for our rivers,
Absolutely,
and this existed. There's different things for different places
for
and all
sure.
that kind of stuff. But for our rivers, if you're gonna catch a big fish on a big fly, it's got to be probably spring or fall or a certain time in the summer. You got to be dialed in on what's happening in the
And
rivers. You know
you
what I
have to
mean?
go do it when it's good.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
which
You're
is
not going to show up on a bluebird sunny
the
day and
case
fucking
to
do that.
all fishing. Yeah. If you go when it's good, it'll be better.
Look at that. Cutting
Write that
insight.
down. Write
Cutting
that down.
insight here from
You should
Charlie's Fly Box.
put that note in your phone.
Mm.
Let's see. Downsized flies, baby gonga, baby swim coach, small sculptzilla, mini and micro dungeons kind of fit into that small category. Um, so keep that in mind too as you explore streamers and tie big stuff. Tie it in a few different
Yeah.
sizes. I think all of us were a victim of tying big. The bigger the better. Streamers, and then you take them out and you fish with them and find they're not that pleasant to cast for the most part. So
Can I say another thing on that front from a walk wade perspective?
yes,
Like it's one thing when you're from a drift boat throwing
absolutely.
these big flies and hitting
Yep.
20 feet of bank, 20 feet of bank,
Right.
20. But when you're trying to pick apart, like I think of like fishing the Eagle or even fishing Gore Canyon
Sure.
or fishing the Ark, where it's really just glorified pocket water on a bigger scale.
Well, and the thing wade fishing is, and you don't realize this in the boat. You think you're just a really good caster, but that guy behind the oars is
doing a lot
keeping
for
you
you.
a very consistent distance from the
Yes.
bank. When you're wade fishing, unless you take 6 steps out here and take 4 steps down and take 6 more steps,
Yes.
you've got to make all those adjustments on your own,
Yes.
consciously on your own.
And I think with the small stuff too, you can just like I can pick apart the left side of a rock, the back of a rock, the right side of a rock, and get the right presentation at the right time
the
for a
right
particular fish.
angle.
And I think that's actually why I convert more big fish on the small
Sure.
flies. It's more just
Covering the angles.
and I can slip it in without them noticing
Sure.
it. You take a full size dungeon
Yeah,
or even a mini
slap.
dungeon
Yep.
and slap that thing on the water,
Yep.
and every fish within 20 feet knows that it's
they
there.
feel it. Yeah.
And you might get the most active one to come look
Sure.
at it, but usually that big picky fish that you
Yeah,
want to
that
eat
you're
it
trying
is
to be
not the
sly
one
about.
that's.
Yeah.
I remember.
He's going to eat the fish that eats your fly.
Exactly. I remember watching a Kelly video and he said something about some guy was being stubborn about throwing big flies and not changing colors. And he was like, "Oh, I'm just going after the one or whatever." He's like, "Well, you must think the one is a dumb son of a bitch because none of the other ones are looking at this thing. Why is the big one going
Just
to?"
waiting for the one big dumb one. It's good to be specific, maybe not that specific.
Yeah.
What else did I have for you? Jig streamers is probably are we to that point? Have I covered everything else?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I'd say jig streamers are probably the newest realm genre of streamers right now. And it's it sort of stems from the Euro fishing kind of thing, though it doesn't necessarily have to be. Jig streamers are typically smaller, heavier, slimmer, so good sink rate. Along the line, same ideas as a Perdigon kind of thing. Slim fly, heavy. Meant to be fished slow, meant to be kind of jigged along, fished very slowly. Flies like the poacher, the micro meat, the Keisha Sugar Mama that I just did the video on. The smaller jig streamers is another realm, and that is just, I shouldn't say just starting to be explored, but just starting to expand in popularity.
Yeah.
It's been around for a while, but now guys have perfected it, and now because of that signature tire program from whoever, Umpqua Feather Merchants is ours.
Yep.
But from
Really the
whoever,
one.
those patterns get out there in the world where everybody gets to see them. And I think that's what keeps the innovation going.
For sure.
Being willing to show those ideas. And I think that's been a big part of this
100%.
plethora of streamers that have come out.
100%.
I had a great point and I've forgotten it because I'm
About jig streamer fishing?
about jig streamer fishing. I don't remember what it was.
How appealing it seems to you and how badly you want to try it in cold winter months?
It seems maybe not. No, I don't think that was the point.
Oh.
I don't think that was
Okay,
the point
must
that I
be
was going to
surprised.
make, but that is a valid point and super exciting. I don't like slow moving things. I don't like things that don't hold my attention. I joke Max about having ADHD. I don't joke. That's not a joke. It's a disease, sir. It's not
My
a joke.
condition is not your.
It is a disease.
Yeah.
But I joke about that. But I like fishing that occupies me and compels me.
Yeah.
And I'm not to. It's not to say when Riley Cotter showed me how to Euro nymph. That was very compelling. I'd never done that before.
Yep.
Since then, it's not as there's not. I don't have any problem with it. There's not anything wrong with it.
Just
It's just not
loses
as
its
compelling
luster.
to me.
Yeah.
The jig streamer stuff, if we went out tomorrow and did it, I could get into it. Whether I'd want to do it all the time, knowing that the big bite and chase is out there also,
Yep.
That is more compelling to me than bopping it along in a current and setting the hook when I see the line twitch.
Yep. It's all visual.
Yeah, I'm a visual guy for sure.
I fish the jig streamers a lot. You can make it visual.
Sure.
If you want it to be visual, you can make it visual. If you want to fit, when I first started doing it, I'd fish on a mono rig under a sighter, not very visual. As I went along and that became less appealing,
Yep.
I what I learned is I can get, instead of getting it to eat it under that rock, I can get it to chase him out of from under that rock.
And
You know what I mean?
the big thing
eat
that
it
you
right at my
learned is
feet.
you like it more when you make them do what you want them
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah.
which is just the natural evolution of an angler.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't. There. Somebody just sent me an email and asked a question about fishing a stream I didn't know about. Blah blah blah. The gist of it being is there might be a more effective way to catch them, but I want to catch them the way I want to catch them.
Yep.
And I think everybody evolves to that. So in the meantime, try all the methods so you know them, or at least are familiar with them, and then go out and pick the one that you like. Pick the flies that you like. Pick the method that you like. Sinking line, floating line. I have my program pretty dialed in to what I like to do these days. It's not that I won't or don't do other things, but I have it pretty dialed in on what I enjoy most, what I think is the most fun thing. I think Max does. I think Sam does. I think Char does. I think everybody's got their, whatever it is. The cool thing is that there's a million ways to do it, and they all work. And
there's nobody telling you what
there's
you got to do.
There ain't no rules to it. Ain't no rules to it. Which
One of
is
the few things in life.
why all of us misfits are here.
Yep.
So that, I think, is that the conclusion of our streamer series?
It is. I think we got a couple more tying videos, hopefully.
Yep.
And then we might do the fast flies, slow flies thing.
We will. Yep. We'll talk a little bit about some fly design on that.
Yep. But as far as the evolution goes, I think
we covered that pretty well. That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
This was a good idea. I'm glad you came up with this.
Yeah, we're gonna do it with nymphs and dries.
Nymphs and dries.
That's gonna be even more fun.
That'll be
one will
even
be
more
more
fun.
fun than the other.
One will be more. Actually, you'd be surprised which one will be more.
I'm
fun.
I'm actually curious about the nymph
There's
thing
a lot
because
of,
there's so much breadth in
there
the
is.
thing. I think I'm gonna learn a lot.
This is this is an old guy saying this to everybody out there, assuming you're younger than me. Although we know from our YouTube statistics that most of you are older than me, but you young guys should watch this stuff and just learn the history of it. And and I'm not saying the history of it like you need to know dates or any of that, but familiarize yourself with where things came from and where they've evolved to.
Full context.
That way, yes, the full context of the whole program. That way, you've got all those tools in your box. Be like your dad showing you how to change the tire, but not telling you about all the tools in the toolbox. It makes it harder. And then somebody tells you, here's a lug wrench. Yeah, that's a lot easier than this crescent wrench I've been using. Familiarize yourself with everything that's out there. I think it makes the whole thing more compelling. Puts more ideas in your head. I just researched all this for these videos, and I have 10 new ideas in my head. Cool. I told you about the idea that I had this morning that turned out to not be a very good idea, and sometimes that happens, but it gets you going. That's the cool thing about tying and fishing. So I hope that helped. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you got, comment on this and tell us what else you'd like to see. If you've got questions,
please.
We'll do some sort of little follow-up if we've got enough good ones. No dumb questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question on our YouTube page because you shouldn't post that. There you go. Thanks for watching, guys.